say thank you for coming
Thanks to you.
talking to us.
Thank you.
It's an
Thank
honor
you
to
for
have you here and to be able to have this conversation at all. And we kind of wanted to start very casually about you. Not to tell us about yourself, obviously you have just done that, but to just dive right in. How are you feeling about everything that's going on right now in Syria, having been exiled and not being able to live there where you were born? And
yes, of course.
spent your first
I don't know
9
if you have
years.
a bit of background. I left Syria when I was 9. I was exiled when I was 9. I went back shortly in 94 to visit my father, who had just returned for his mother's funerals. I got into an argument with Bashar, whose brother had just passed away. His brother was being prepared, Basil, by my uncle to take over at one point, and I hadn't met Bashar before, and really nobody even talked about Bashar, and
he was not meant to take power, right?
he was not meant, and nobody really knew him in Damascus or in Syria. Everyone knew Basil, everyone knew his brother Maher, but no one knew who Bashar was. And so one day I was going to the Sheraton Hotel and I asked my friend, please, I'll wait for you in the car if you could book a table for us. And I see Bashar with his cousin and another friend of him coming out with 2 security people. He passed by me, next to my car. He didn't talk to me. And while he's coming out, he started, talking to me very badly, And at one point he said, "Didn't you see the video of your cousin Yahya being tortured?" We have a cousin that also I didn't know, but he was an officer in the army, and I don't know for what reason they tortured him. And he told me, "Haven't you watched the video of your cousin Yahya being tortured?" And I said, "What the hell are you talking about? Are you crazy? How are you talking to this? Like, you're very proud that you tortured, you had your people torture your cousin, and you've had him on video, and you're distributing it like I'm supposed to see it, And he's like, "Well, you're talking to me like this? It seems like you're not going to understand until I do the same thing to you." And I came out of the car, I hit him, and he ran away, and I was like, and his security were next to my doors, and they said, "We don't want to intervene. It's a problem between you and your cousin. We have, we're not going to intervene." And then 10, 15 minutes later, his brother came, the same thing, with Maher. He also left, So I returned home, and 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, they first came. I had this property that my father had put in my name, like an empty property that Maher came and took with his army, And a couple of months later, I was traveling to study in Boston, and they sent, Republican guards to the airport to try to assassinate me. And thank God my father came with me, because he got reports that there was a movement of Republican guards to the airport, and I was supposed to leave on Austrian Airlines. So he called my uncle before, and he said, "Ribal is traveling to, he's going to leave to study in Boston." And he told him Washington, even though I was going to Boston, I remember, and my uncle told him, "Yeah, tell him to study well, make us proud, And my father hung up, and he said, "This is what your uncle said." I said, "This is great." "No," he said, "No." I said, "Why?" He said, "When your uncle is very happy, it means he's going to do something to you."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Oh, great," So he decides to take me there. He leaves all the security detail next to the lounge, next to the the lounge area, and he drives me to the plane with my mom and my brother, and my 2 sisters were following in the other car. And we suddenly got surrounded. When we got to the Austrian plane, we got surrounded by all the presidential convoy with hundreds of soldiers coming out and started shooting in the air, everywhere. And my father was like, "Who's the responsible here? If one last bullet could the plane with everyone on it could, they could just explode." And they just didn't care. And the general came, who was head of the convoy, General Mufid al-Rawan, and he saluted my father, and he was like, he panicked. He was like, "Excuse me, sir, His Excellency, we don't know. We have orders from the president. He wants Ribal." So anyway, after 2 hours and a half, because of course my father didn't want to give me up. After 2 hours and a half, I told my father, "It's better you go back home and let me go with them. At least I know you're in security back home." And first he refused, but after 2 hours and a half, he agreed. So I went with them, and 20 minutes later, my father had called my uncle and threatened that if I wasn't back, that he's going to fight him in every street in Damascus. So they released me after 20 minutes, and I was able to travel, 2 days later to Boston. And I came back in 1997 on Christmas holidays to visit my father in Latakia. And then my uncle dismissed him and allowed him to leave the country. So my father asked me, could you please stay, take care of the charity, you could continue your studies later. So I said, yeah, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I stayed until 1999. Yeah. And then I went to visit my father in Latakia. And then the people called me on a satellite phone who were at the house, and they said, sir, please listen to the noise. They're bombing us. They have the tanks on the bridge in front of the house. They have rocket launchers in the sports city right opposite the house. They have gunships that are shooting from the sea. And I was listening to that. I was like, can't you get out? He's like, no, sir, we don't want to get out. We're not going to come out, and we don't want to give up. We're going to fight, and yeah. And then so this is what happened. And and shortly later, I was trying to reach some media in the UK and other countries, trying to tell them, please don't pick up the regime's version of events. This is not an illegal port. This is my house. This is our family house. You could go send a journalist there, and he will see this. There's no possibility of having a port in that area. We have a hotel opposite the house. There's many officers' houses in this bay. And there's also an intelligence headquarters that's opposite the house. So it's impossible. But they didn't want to listen. Everyone was backing Bashar at the time. They wanted Bashar to become president. And shortly later, in 2000, his father passed away. And as you know, every president, like from Jacques Chirac, Tony Blair, Madeleine Albright, King Abdullah of Jordan, King Abdullah of Saudi, they all went there. And, they wanted Bashar. They said, this is the president, and he's the one who's going to take
Stability.
over. Yeah.
For me, it sounds like your situation a weird mix between classical family struggles and politics, in a way.
Yes, of course, but at the same time, when you're at this age, you feel like, if I'm their cousin and I'm part of the family, and this happened to me. Could you imagine what every Syrian people must have suffered? Could you imagine sitting in the car for 2 hours and a half and seeing people shooting everywhere? You don't know that you and your father and your mom and your sister, we could all be killed at any second, And and this is where it was really it woke me up, that something needs to be done. And this is where I decided that I should stand up for our people. I should not let this happen, to other people. And it continued to happen, to our supporters even after we left. They started arresting all of them, torturing them, and some of them stayed in jail for like 8 years. And they were making them sign white papers, after torture, you sign anything. They just they give you a white paper, you sign it, and then they fill it up for you. Yeah, and then. The Iraq War happened. Even though he had a chance to change the country, he had a chance to move, with the allies at the time, who were all the Western countries, and try to move the country towards democratic changes. Somebody, I think somebody from the Iranians and people from the regime who were worried that if he moves towards democratic changes, they will lose all their interest, because they only agreed that he takes after his father because he could keep their interest in place. So they told him, and the Americans are in Iraq, they're next coming to Syria, So you'd better stand with Iran, So he started allowing to open many mosques in Syria. He started Islamization of society. Before in the 80s, we had 20% of women who wore the veil in Syria. And then we started had 80% of women wearing the veil in Syria. He started opening many mosques instead of opening more schools and universities, and started, sending all those Islamists to fight the American forces and British forces in Iraq. And they were caught between those sent by Syria and those sent by the Iranians. And and that's it. He had moved, I think, to too far, and then he supported, if you remember, the first the war. He was supporting Hezbollah. He was supporting Hamas. He opened an office for Hamas in Syria. So for those the allies that he was supposed to have, for the Western countries who supported him, they thought that that he's gone too far. That this person who was supposed to move the country for democracy.
I think that's why they didn't support him anymore.
Exactly.
And so to wrap it up, when we come to your personal feelings, I think you're very happy about what happened in Syria in the last weeks. Or
Honestly, I have mixed feeling. I was telling earlier in the elevator,
Yeah.
I'm happy in one point that he's gone.
Yeah.
This chapter is closed.
Yeah.
You know, and finally, you know, like we could look at building our future. But at the same time, I'm sad because I'm like, why didn't he do that before?
Yeah.
Why did we have to destroy why did he have to destroy our country
Yeah.
and have these 13 years of war
Yeah.
that has led to 60% of the infrastructure being destroyed
Yeah.
of the whole country?
Yeah, the whole
So
wealth,
over 6
everything.
million refugees.
Yeah. The
Over
country is
8
in
million
ruins, right?
internally displaced, over a million killed, over a million injured. It's horrible. You know, we are now the poorest country in the world.
Yeah. What you, I mean, it's still in the end, I think that's what makes it different for you. So, and then I think we're done with that emotional question for the beginning. But if I may ask you this bluntly, would you have wished for him to be killed?
Honestly, no. I don't wish for anyone to be killed. I have this thing. My wife, for example, we were receiving all those videos from people coming out of jails, and others. You know, those videos, horrible people being there for 40 years. You know, some people couldn't even remember who they are.
Yeah.
So, and some women having kids in there that she didn't know who the father because he was raped by so many soldiers. So and my wife told me, you have to see. I said, I cannot watch those videos. You know, like it's not, I cannot take it, you know. So it's definitely not, I cannot accept, you know, like, you know, the vision of, you know, when I was, you know, younger, for example, I used to, yeah, like, for example, like hunting or something, you know, but after a certain age, you know, I couldn't even accept of you know, like, you know, I started feeling that it's just something, you know, horrible, you know, to just do a hunt, and I think idiotic. That
I think that's a very humane view of things. I like that.
yes, no, this is how it is.
So, I mean, thank you for sharing. It seems like it's a topic that's, well, as you say, it elicits mixed feelings, and especially with everything that's going on, of course, that's to be understood. And if you don't mind, we would also be interested in hearing. You mentioned when you were describing the situation in the airport that your father was, you know, he was there and he was trying to talk to your uncle on your behalf and everything. And we wanted to ask a little bit about your relationship with your father as well, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. Well, you know, when I was younger, my father was like, you know, we didn't see him as just as a father, you know, because he was more like a leader. He was more someone who's always with his military, with his troops. You know, my father, you know, was always, since we were very young, and, you know, like he was talking about, you know, like the importance of why we need democracy in Syria and the Middle East, you know, and he had started in Al-Fursan magazine in 1967, which at the time was very strange to have somebody promoting democracy in the Middle East and you know, in Syria and the Middle East. And he was talking about the equality of women. He started, you know, could you imagine? I mean, in Syria, he had the first Arabic country, and I think one of the first in the world. He started having women in the military,
Yeah.
and we had 6,000 paratroopers, women, lady paratroopers. And to encourage women, my father had asked my mother if she wanted to take part, and my mother agreed. My mother, and my two sisters, Lema and May, and they were all, you know, to encourage other women. They said, if his wife and his daughters are joining, you know, like, then it's. And I think it was, you know, it was like very well received. All those women, as I told you, started, you know, joining. He sent, you know, women to pilot the helicopters, the Gazelle helicopters in France in 1984-85. And I think the first woman who piloted a helicopter in the U.S. was in 1983, and there was only one. You know, my father sent, you know, a dozen to France. So he opened the Association for Highly Educated People, which had 30,000 members. He was sending, and he was head of higher education. He built the University of Latakia, the University of Homs. He enlarged the University of Aleppo, and he was sending tens of thousands of students to study in.
He was a progressive figure.
He was very, of course, but you know, a lot of people did not accept it, and my uncle thought of him as becoming a bit of a threat. So he started, he wanted to get rid of him. And this is where you hear that my father tried to make a coup against his brother. You know, it was, that is not actually true.
Because, I mean, for me, I read, when I read this briefing about this possible coup, I found it very natural to stuff like that. I really don't. This is nothing that catch my eye. I mean, what I wanted to talk to you about as well, and this where this question comes from. I agree with what your father did there. You can also find this, but there are also some bad things that you have contested in the
Of
past.
course, yes.
But I want to touch them again, if you don't mind. So, very many international organizations put forward allegations against your father about various massacres in a prison, in a shooting
They
of
say
a city.
Hama and the Palmyra prison.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, I mean, I understand that be your father being a progressive figure for you, and of course your father, but don't you think that your father being an important figure of the regime of Assad's father before is already something that we should question very much on a moral and humanistic point of view,
Of course, but
even if these allegations are not true in the end.
Of course, it's important, and it was even important for me because I grew up in the West, and I had many people, like it's horrible when you're a kid and people tell you, oh, you're the son of this and your uncle is that, and it was really horrible, like every day to listen to that. Even my children now, they're British, and I don't want them to hear that, but they start searching the internet and they say, you know what I mean. But at one point, you have to defend you have to look for the truth. You know what I mean? The Hama, first of all, when they say the Hama massacre, Hama was an armed, the Muslim Brotherhood at the time were fighting all over Syria since the 1960s until the 1982. They were armed. The leader went on Al Jazeera, Adnan Saadeddin, and he said that Saddam Hussein had opened the weapons depots and asked them to go take over Hama, and from Hama start taking over other cities in Syria. The government sent 3 divisions, the divisions around 45,000 troops to Hama. So they didn't need those 3 divisions. Do you ever hear about their leaders? People saying, oh, they were part of the massacre? We never hear about them. There was a committee of 6 people, which my father was not even part of, that was responsible also to quell the rebellion in Hama. Do you hear about them? No. Also at the same time, we have to understand that those people took over a city. They started killing Ba'ath Party members, started killing, people who were Alawites or others, and they had like a slogan called Adas. And Adas was killing Alawites for, Adas.
Alawites being your group of people inside Syria.
Yes, Druze, D is for Druze, and S for Ismailis. So Adas it also means lentils. So they had it like kind of the slogans, we should kill those 3 infidel, those group of infidels. So, but at the same time, people tell you, the conflict in Hama, that conflict lasted 3 weeks. So if you speak to any military, like any general, who knows about conflicts or history of conflicts, he will tell you all those numbers, it's nonsense. The only, real report or official report that came out was from the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon in the US. It was declassified in 2013. And it says exactly in the report everything that happened in Hama. And it doesn't list at one time the name of my father or his units. And it says the number of people who died in the war were 2,000, from which 400 were part of the special forces of the Muslim Brotherhood. That actually makes sense, because similar conflicts happen at later stage in like Nahr al-Bared in Lebanon, which was not long ago, when the Islamists took over the Nahr al-Bared refugee camps, and the army was fighting them. The Lebanese army destroyed the whole camp, and around 1,000 people passed away. People from the Lebanese army and from the Islamist extremists. And then the head of the army at the time became the president of Lebanon, and nobody said, "Oh, this is you did something bad." He was defending his, He was defending his country.
So you feel like your father was just pictured by the circumstances. I think
he was. They wanted to blame everything on my father, because when this happened in 1982. The problem between my uncle and my father started this supposedly my uncle getting ill and having a heart attack. It was all not true and all lies. It was just a reason to get rid of my father and to put everything on him. So it was a year after They planned this, and as soon as my father left, they released 500 members of the Muslim Brotherhood and started dialogue with them. So they wanted a scapegoat. Oh, look, everything, Rifat was bad, Rifat did this, Rifat did that. And the story about and also my father was responsible of the protection of Damascus. At the same time, you remember at that time there was the Israel invasion of Lebanon. So, and Lebanon, Beirut is much closer to Damascus than Hama. Hama is 200 kilometers away. So, and there were no Republican guards at the time. The only troops that were responsible to protect Damascus was my father's troops, Unit 569. So why would he leave? You could ask any general, why would he leave the capital and go 200 kilometers away, and the Israelis could reach Damascus in an hour? You know what I mean?
Okay, I see. I mean, I think I see your point as well. There's conflicting information about that, but I think everyone can agree on that we cannot blame the real or alleged sins of your father on you. I think this is the important
yes.
thing. But thank you for also sharing this personal view on that. I think what wrapped up this.
One more thing I want to tell you. The former Minister of Defense of my uncle, who was there for 30 years, he did an interview with Der Spiegel, and he said. He said it. I mean, it's not like someone else. It's written. I could send it to you. He said he used to sign 150 to 200 death warrants every week, and he was when he was in power. So 30 years, if you count 150 people a week, could you imagine all those thousands of people? And do you ever see anyone saying Mustafa Tlass was responsible for all those deaths? No. Because again, what is it? Is it a sectarian issue? Is it because my father is an Assad? Is it because he's an Alawite? Is it because why is always the blame on this person? Why you don't say Mustafa Tlass, who said he killed so many people, is the butcher of Syria? Why didn't you say those other people are butchers?
I think this comes from the perspective that you and your family, you went to the West and you secured a foothold in the West. And what we Westerners tend to do in situations like this, where we have family relatives of dictatorships who have been a part of the regime in that or that way, and then are coming to the West for that and those reasons. Sometimes it is because they have other political ideas. Sometimes it is because of a coup that failed. But I think there's a lot of similar stories, right, from all countries over the world. And I think what we from the West then tend to do is we start to show them around as the good, like in your situation, show them around as the good Syrians,
yes,
Yeah. And I think so that's why we put in this question, because I think it is important to break up our habit of telling, oh, this is the bad people and this is the good people, when it comes from a very complex situation. Because there is no good and bad, there's only gray, in my opinion. I think if you are part of a certain regime, you never have clean hands. But as said, I think you personally, you have clean hands. So and I totally understand why you defend your father. And I think this is why we put this question in, because we really we wanted to get your emotional perspective on this. So thank you for sharing your emotions there. Thank you also for sharing your emotions.
But also at the same time, I consider myself like a citizen of the world. I'm European, I'm Westerner. I studied in the U.S., in France, in the U.K., I lived in Spain, so lived in China. So I lived really all over. But when we really want to promote certain values, we have to be, we shouldn't be hypocrites.
Yeah.
Because it's terrible mainly when it's something that I do, and then I'm like, well, I've been promoting all those values all those years, and thinking, wow, I've been living in the West, and then all those Western countries that promote those beautiful values of human rights, democracy, equality, and then you find out that it's not actually very true, because it depends who you are. If you have a certain last name, you could be born in this country, you could be a citizen, or you could be a resident, you could be, you're still gonna pay for your last name.
Yeah.
And this is terrible.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
You will always be seen as an Al-Assad.
Exactly, but I was exiled when I was a kid.
Yeah.
My kids are British. My wife is British. My brother's kids are British, and his wife is British.
Yeah.
And when I applied, for example, for citizenship in the UK, I was refused on the ground that I'm part of an Assad clan, of the Assad clan. But I felt like I'm watching Braveheart. You remember this, like a clan. Who talks about clans anymore? Maybe in Syria and in Iraq, he talks about the tribes, and they're part of the Assad clan, and that that the granting of citizenship might affect the UK's relationship, international relations with countries such as Qatar, Turkey, Saudi, and Oman. Could you imagine when you're proud of being in a country that a democratic country, they're worried about Qatar, they're worried about not pleasing Turkey. Who cares?
If it would be like that, then the whole European foreign policy would be very different.
Yes,
I suppose.
Exactly. But we shouldn't, as I said, we should show an example, because again, when I fight for those things, and Syrian on the ground say, oh, so. The values that you promote, for us, they don't look to work they don't seem to be working on you. You know what I mean? So how are you going to make us believe that these countries want those values in our country, and this is what you're pushing for, and you yourself you're not able to live as as an equal citizen in these countries? They're after you because you're an Assad. So a lot of them, and Bashar, of course, uses those kind of things. He said, if you don't stand with me, they're not going to leave any of you. Look, my uncle who left Syria in 1984, they're after him, they're after his family, after his children. So do you think they're going to let you who have sided by me, who have fought with me? They're never going to let you. And this is again one point that I think we must, people in the West and should start looking at. If we promote something, we have to be, we have to show the world first that this is how we are. We cannot, for example, at the beginning of the Arab Spring, we're promoting democracy and freedom in Syria, but then they go to Qatar or other countries who back Islamic extremism, and it's known many, head of for Western intelligence, Sir Malcolm Rifkin, and many other, even Biden when he was vice president, he said some of our allies are backing all those Islamic extremists in the region. So you cannot say, I'm promoting, we want democracy in this country, but no, in this country, let's leave it aside because they have money and, they are investing in our countries. It's realpolitik, we know it, but it's not, we don't look serious. For those who are fighting for those things in their own countries, it doesn't support our fights, If we stand for democracy, I always say, and human rights, we have to stand for democracy and human rights everywhere, not just for Ukraine, and not for another country, not for Syria, not for another country, it has to be equal for everywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I can imagine that the hypocrisy is particularly frustrating for you, because it's not despite your family that you have done the work that you do. From what I understand, it's because of your family, and because of your experience with your father and growing up in Syria until you were 9 and then being exiled, that you have chosen to do all the wonderful work that you do. So I completely understand your frustration about this.
Yes, and I really believe in it. I grew up as I said, in all these countries, and I think it's actually absurd when you come. When I meet you, I'm not going to ask you, sorry, are you Catholic or Protestant or Jewish? Do you follow the Kabbalah thing, or are you Ashkenazi or Sepharad? Are you this or that? Who cares? You know what I mean? It's absurd. That in this day and age, people are still talking about these tribal things.
I think you said the most important thing a few seconds ago. You said we in the West, and I think this translates to being in the West, being Western. I think even the name is not so good because it goes down on geography. But in reality, being part of what is called the West just means having a culture of liberal democracy, of freedom, of individual rights. Yes. And I personally don't think it matters at all where you're from. It just matters if you believe in this right.
In humanity, right? As humans, whoever you are, I have friends who are from all over the world, Jewish, Christians, the Buddhist, atheist. I don't care, and nobody should care. It's true or not. As long as he's a good person, why should we care? So we treat each other, in good manners, in good things. Your ideas, if you want to pray, not pray, it's your own problems. So we should not. And this is again another problem that I have is for example, with with Islamic extremism, or those people who try to, for example, want to impose certain things on Western value. If I want, like, for example, if I want to live a certain life, I say, okay, I love this culture. I come and to live in this country. I say I want to adapt. I want to learn their language. I want to be part of this. And I'm very. You have to be proud of it. You know what I mean? And assimilate with the people there. And if you're not happy and if you want to live a different culture, there are many other countries that also provide that. Like if you want to live in a certain way, pray a certain way, wear a certain dress, yeah, you could go to Afghanistan. It's nice. You could. That kind of people. There are many countries where you could go and they accept it. You know what I mean? But also, it's not good to to impose something on another culture, because this will have a backlash. You know what I mean? I'm a Muslim, and I would, and my wife is a Muslim, my children are Muslim, our family are Muslim, but you cannot come and say, I want to pray in the middle of the street. Why? And some people, the problem with liberalism sometimes is that it says, let them, pray in the street. But it's not, even in our religion, you should not pray in the street. This is the same thing. So when you tell them they should do something, or when you give them the right to, when you say the right, yes, Muslim, for example, wear the veil or the burqa or whatever. But this is not in Islam. You're in a way, this should be talked or discussed between Muslims. Or you should say, this faction of Muslims believe in wearing the burqa or veil. But you cannot say, this is how Muslims are, how all Muslims are.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was doing a street format for a YouTube channel 2 years ago. I think you can still find it, for a channel called Iman TV.
Yeah.
And it was a quiz, and you needed to answer 8 questions about Islam. And when you would get 6 right, then you would get 50 euros.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in history and politics and religion. So I don't know so much about Islam, but I would say I know way more than the average person in Europe here who's not Muslim, and especially more as the average Christian person. And so I said, okay, I can earn €50 Of course, I do it. And then during the quiz, I realized more and more and more that these guys doing the quiz are most likely just the modern version of this Salafists who gave out Qurans in the streets in Germany a few years prior. And so I started to challenge them a little bit. And because they always, in this quiz, it always said, do Muslims do this?
Yeah.
And I challenged them. And then at some point I just said, okay, you say Muslims do this and this with the Kaaba. And I just said, which fatwa says that? And for those who don't know, fatwa is like a theological decision by an Islamic university, by a cleric. But of course, there is multiple clerics and multiple religious institutions in Islam. So one might put out another fatwa than another one. And so this completely catched him off guard, because he never expected this German Christian boy to ask.
It's really good that, because we have many things between Arabs and Muslims. We send many jokes to each other, because there are some fatwas that are just the weirdest thing. So they become the joke on social media. One of the imams said, women should not eat bananas, or women should sit on a lower, they should never sit on the same level as the man, So you're like, what the, like all those kind of things. You're like, honestly, could you imagine when people have to follow these people? Like some people want to even follow these people. It's just strange, and you have a lot of people follow, like they tell you, this guy was a companion of the Prophet. They have thousands of things that he said. They tell you the Prophet said that, again, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of. I say, come on, people, we have to use our own brain. Do you think all those people, if you have your own recorder, at the time, sitting next to someone, you could not register so many things, and he had other things to do than just sitting with all of you guys, and starting giving you and writing. Could you imagine each one have tens of thousands of things that the Prophet said? It's
I have
impossible.
the same discussion with my grandmother over and over again. She says, the Bible is written by God. And then I say, but no, it was people who wrote the Bible. And then she says, yeah, but God hold their pen for them. And then I say, but grandma, where's this written down? In the Bible. So in the Bible it says the people who wrote the Bible are sent by God. But I think religion is a good opportunity to come back to Syria, because it was religious forces conquering now. Really.
Yeah, I mean, to transition a little bit between from your work on interfaith dialogue and all that to, acknowledging that we are here in the European Parliament this morning, and we are in a unique position here and in a unique situation, because obviously with what's happened last weekend, it's a time of uncertainty. Syria is kind of on a precipice, and it's an opportunity as well as it is a risk. So, Lukas here is a member of the delegation to Afghanistan, and something that we were all thinking about is, when the Taliban took over a few years ago, there was this push to appear
as moderate
and
they
friendly
were promising
to the
they would let
West.
women to study and all of that, and then everything changed.
Exactly. And the West was maybe a little, cautious, but a bit naive, hopeful that this would this would pan out. And of course, the group has then returned to Sharia law and has cracked down on women's rights and things like that. So this is in the back of our minds, especially about how we will move forward and what can we do to stabilize Syria and the situation in the short term, while also promoting democracy and human rights in the long term without falling to the same traps that we did with Afghanistan.
Yes, but are we gonna continue making the same mistake and say we were naive every time we repeat and we say, oh, sorry, we were naive? A lot of people died because of our naivete, but it's okay, we were naive. You know what I mean? We were naive when the Shah left and we brought the Khomeini from France and let him, rule Iran. And since then we've been suffering. And now we say, oh, we were naive. We thought that this was the right thing to do. You know what I mean? And then same thing in Afghanistan. Again, you were naive. Those people, you knew how they were in power. Why would you think they changed?
I mean, I was not surprised at all.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the Western countries, they knew.
It felt like an excuse, of course, to keep our hands up and say we didn't know. They promised us this and this.
Yes, but this is a continuous thing.
Yeah.
This is why now, when I read yesterday,
where all the nation building failed also as well. I just want to, because it happens to me all the time. I think your pin. Turn to the side. I have this all the time. Really? Yes. I just saw it, and it happens to me every day. I also have them on my shoes.
Let's repeat everything.
Start from the top.
I know this feeling. Then you watch this video, and you're happy with what you're saying, what you're doing, and then you're looking at your pen and like, fuck no. I think it's all good. That's what you do to help you there.
Oh
so
God.
sorry. We were talking about Western naivety.
Yes. So it's terrible. Again, yesterday you have the UK and the US saying, and I think a lot of it has to do with the internal politics. Like for example, now Biden maybe wants to leave chaos for Trump, before he comes. So he says, oh, we're considering of lifting those people, HTS from the terrorist list. How could you be a terrorist and then stop being a terrorist? You know what I mean?
Oh, we have some organizations here in the European Parliament who have been on the terror list a few years ago and now are registered lobbyists.
It's great. But it's just crazy.
Don't expect too much from us.
I agree with you. And I think it is a very tense situation, and HTS now leading the charge. And I mean, of course, what also people need to understand, in my opinion, is that only because HTS is the most biggest and most powerful organization, and now the one being mentioned in the media all the time, and it is their leader making these public addresses, the forces that now tackle the regime are in no way, or even in the majority, I think, HTS. I think it's dozens, if not hundreds of groups, and
the HTS is a grouping of Islamist extremist groups.
Exactly. And there it already starts, right?
Yeah.
So,
but fighting with them, You have the Turkestan Islamic Party from China. You have the Chechens, you know. You have the Dagestanis. You have Europeans. You have all those jihadis. Is a group of jihadis. It's like what Bin Laden had in Afghanistan, you know, but a lot more, because those people, if you've seen them, you know, they're a lot better armed. They've been trained by Turkey. They've been armed by Turkey. You know, and you've seen the equipment, you've seen the cars, the vehicles, the armored vehicles with which they came in, the uniforms, the bulletproof vest. It's all has been given by Turkey. And Jolani himself, in his interview, he said, they asked, "Oh, how did you do?" You know, he said, "Well, we were different units, and when we were in Idlib, when the regime was surrounding them in every area in Syria, they would get to a dialogue with them and say, okay, let's put them on green buses with their weapons, and poor guys, send them to Idlib, you know." And that's another stupid thing from the regime to have done.
I must say, I mean, I'm happy, but I never understood in the last couple of years why they did not finish Idlib off. If I would have been your cousin, I would have taken every measure to finish off those last part of rebel, because if the idea about any revolution is, I think it's two things. It's an idea, and then ideas you can never kill. That's what people also forget. But it's also the possibility to live up to this idea. And if you have one whole province still in control by the people who have the idea of revolution in mind, you are always, as a dictator or as any ruler, basically in the existential threat of losing power. But to come back, what I wanted to say before we touched it, I think the idea that now the HTS are scared to piss off the West too much, and then they would be peaceful and democratic and liberal. I think that's nonsense, because that's exactly that. This thinking is exactly what led to the thinking that made the Taliban play nice for 1 year, and then they started. I have one hope that I would like to have your opinion on. I think that what the HTS understand is that they cannot control Syria without suppressing millions of people, because I mean, you know, maybe better than me, but I think the vast majority of the Syrian people do not want to live in a caliphate.
Of course.
And I think also the HTS know that, and I think they I hope, and that's my hope, that they understand that they could only erect their caliphate with a lot of suppression, but they understand also that the Syrian people, after 50 years of dictatorship and after nearly 15 years of civil war, would not accept another suppressive regime. That is my hope, and that's why they will not go to their extremist.
But just to give you an idea, do you know how many AK-47 were looted in Latakia in the past 3 days? Over
thousands?
40,000.
Oui.
Yeah, could you imagine? That's in Latakia alone.
Yeah.
So if their troops were around 50,000, you know, those HTS, could you imagine now if they come in and start opening training grounds and just as you know, and we have to know that HTS does not work on its own. They are ordered by, you know, they work under Erdogan's control. They are under Erdogan's control. So you have to look at it in a way that Turkey and Iran have been, I mean, they've always had very good relationships, and both are expansionist. Both dream of their empires, the Persian Empire versus the Ottoman Empire. And they agree on a lot. The difference is that Iran has a very limited, how to say, influence.
Yeah, they are broke.
Because they use the Shia Arabs, and Shia Arabs, there's little in the Gulf, a bit in Iraq, okay, very small in Syria, and a bit in Lebanon, to get their access to the Mediterranean. But Turkey's expansionism is the Ottoman Empire. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, you know.
Yeah.
They view the Ottoman Empire to be from Mauritania to Western China, and they believe that all those countries used to be under, Turks or under Turkey. So, for example, now you talk about the Tatar in Crimea. They tell you these are Turks.
Yeah, we just met them 2 weeks
ago. You talk about the Uyghurs in China. These are Turks.
Yeah.
You talk about the Azeris in China. These are Turks. Everyone is Turkish, you know. So this is why it's very dangerous, you know, because Could you imagine? I mean, the expansion, how far he wants to go, Erdogan, and he has not hidden his true intentions.
But don't you think he will retire soon? I actually think he's done. He has now his few years in office left, and then.
But those few years are actually the most dangerous, because, for
Well,
example, now the
Mm-hmm.
HTS has taken over. Maybe, we don't know. Maybe at one point he says, "What stopped them? What could stop them from taking Lebanon? Nothing. What could stop them from moving left to Iraq?" Because the biggest worry for Erdogan, and that's why he was trying to him and Putin to push Putin to let Bashar talk to him and sit with him, is that he wanted to to have an agreement very quickly with the Syrian regime to stop the dream of a greater Kurdistan. Because he believed in the new Middle East, the West wants to create a greater Kurdistan of 35, 40 million people, which would take the biggest chunk of land from Turkey.
Yeah.
As the largest Kurdish population is in Turkey, over 20 million, and then the others are between Iraq, Syria, and Iran, So those four countries, plus Russia, agree that they need to get the US out from the region so that to stop this greater Kurdistan.
This Trump might do them the favor of, but so to wrap it up, do you think there's a possibility that the HTS now become? I mean, maybe we have to ask another question first. Do you think the HTS will be in power in Syria, or who do you think will be in power in half a year?
We have to understand HTS is Al-Nusra, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas. They're all the same people. They all share the same perverted ideology with different brands. It's like if the doctor tells you don't drink caffeine, you're not going to just say, I'm going to stop drinking coffee, but I'll drink everything else that has caffeine. You know what I mean?
So you're talking about fundamentalist Islamistic
exactly. So
ideals.
They could stand in the back as the soldiers and let the Muslim Brotherhood run the country as a political party.
Okay, then let me phrase it differently. Do you think that there will be an Islamist government in Syria, or democratic, or some other form?
I think if the Western countries don't push, to make sure that there is a modern constitution, modern progressive constitution with equality of all citizens and the rule of law, and that's very easy. The Western countries should say, you know what?
It hasn't worked out so well the last 10 years.
No, that's not very easy to have. I mean,
very
that's very easy to for the Western countries to say, listen, guys, we will only support those who share our values. Why would you want to support someone who doesn't share our values? It's true or not? Like all and it's very easy. As if they are willing to sign to the equality of a woman and a man, then okay, fine. You can be an Islamist. Are you sure you want to sign to equality of woman and man and the rule of law? In the constitution, the equality between Christian and Muslim, great. The equality between Sunni, Shia, Alawites, Druze, Ismaili, all this, very good. Between Kurds, Arabs, and this. And do you think Islamist extremists will sign up to that? So if they sign up to that, it's great. That means they're no longer Islamist extremists. You know what I mean? And if they don't, it shows you their true color. It shows you that this is what the Syria that they want. Well, they can say whatever they want. It's like Jolani. I mean, idiotically, he said on the thing, we will protect minorities. I mean, minorities, what are they? Sheep, cattle, dog, they need to be protected. Could you imagine in Germany or in a country, you say, we will protect Arabs and Indians and Africans.
Sometimes I have the feeling in Germany this needs to happen. But yeah, I get your point. I mean, I think you don't have any aspirations of power. I think you personally, and I think we can all agree that that your family is out of the picture for this for good.
No, it's not being in nobody is like, I mean, power, as I said, when you promote democracy and you want to have a genuine democracy, is the people who will decide who will rule them. You just could have an influence to try to push people towards to make the right decisions, because you don't want them to, for example, to agree to something today that they will come to regret in 3-4 years. And say, oh my God, because we did that, we ruined our countries. This is what happened with those who supported Bashar. I was telling them, you need to do this and this and this. They were very afraid. Now everyone calls me. In the past 3 days, I've never received so many calls in my whole life, from Syria and others. And they say, you were right. We're sorry. You were right. But they were, they were scaring us. Talking to you was
Also fair enough.
I know, but this is again. So this is why I say you have to always educate people, try to push people to make the right decisions, because you don't want them. Because once it's done, it's done. It will be too late for them to regret it if they let the Islamists take over. If they believe that this Jolani or whatever is going to be a Democrat, once they draft a new constitution, and if it's not drafted correctly, that would be the new constitution for Syria.
I see. So I mean, as a jurist, I like the idea of the decision coming down to the drafting of the constitution. I think who has, fortunately, because they backed the wrong player, no say in that, hopefully, is Russia. So.
Yeah, we obviously we also here in the parliament have been very focused on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's taken up a lot of our attention here. Rightly so, but also perhaps sometimes at detriment to other things. And of course, we cannot ignore the geopolitical background of what it's been, kind of underneath everything we have been saying, and we have touched on it briefly. But of course, your cousin has fled to Moscow, and yeah, we are interested as well about the role that the big powers, we have talked about Turkey in particular, but Russia and China and Iran and these big powers. And so I don't know.
I think the question would be, do you think that the Russians will now give up to put influence in Syria? Part of the military bases has been surrounded. Other ones are left alone somewhat. But of course, it's a big loss of face. And so what do you think? Will the Russians now give up in Syria, focus on Ukraine, or will they try to also influence the new constitution that we just touched on?
The problem of Russia, is that Russia has been trying since the failed military coup against Erdogan. They have been cultivating, and they made Erdogan become Putin's best friend. Because he sees, and he was trying to tell Bashar, listen, okay, Syria is important. Our port in Tartus and our airbase, they're important. But Erdogan is a lot more important to us. He's the second largest army in NATO. So we want him on our side. You have to sit with him. And Bashar didn't listen. And Putin showed Erdogan that, look, I'm not like the other Western countries or like the US. I'm gonna treat you as a partner, as a friend. Look, in Libya, take Tripoli, we back Haftar, in Azerbaijan, Armenia, okay, fine. Those Armenians started looking west, you should go ahead, support Azerbaijan to get back Nagorno-Karabakh, in Syria, what is it that you want, let's work together. Can I have the coastal area? Putin knows very well that the majority, the other than the coastal area, the people that they would never like the Russians. For them, the Russians are the one who supported bombing them with Bashar.
That's
so can I keep just and look at Putin, what he does when he went to Georgia. He didn't take over Georgia. He took South Ossetia and Abkhazia. When he went into Ukraine today, he's like, oh, I only want those areas because they're originally Russians. So and Crimea. So this is all what I want. You know what I mean? So he's trying to tell the West that I just want my shares. I just want a portion. I'm not trying to take everything. That's the way he views things.
So I think he will try to secure his share, like the port maybe.
But I think for Syria specifically, I think from what the Trump administration has been talking about, in the past year or whatever, he believes that the Trump administration is willing to give him whatever land he has taken until now during the war. So to make him like, okay, you want, we're not going to make you lose face. You keep these territories, but in exchange, you give up on Bashar. It could be because the way they dropped him, it was a bit strange. I understand the Iranians because Bashar was giving up all their positions in Syria. So he was betraying them, and this is actually what the Iranians said. He said Bashar lost because he withdrew from the axis of resistance.
I mean, I also think to break it down again on the very human level, and maybe from the few occasions that you actually have met your cousin, you can paint us a picture. Because I was found a bit funny. It must have been really, really embarrassing for Bashar al-Assad, because he was in Moscow when the offenses of the HES started. So I imagine him sitting in a room with Putin, and then at the same time someone comes in and whispers in his ear, "Oh, it's
But I don't
happening."
think so. I think they told him to go to Moscow to tell him this is what's going to happen.
Ah, okay. So
For
you
sure, yeah.
you don't know
No, it's not.
because
They knew. They knew 2 months before. Whether their intelligence, Russian, Iranian, Syrian, all these people, they don't have intelligence to know those people were getting ready. The Division 25 from the Syrian army went there 2 months ago in October. They moved there. You see their troops moving there. So he knew they were getting ready to move.
well, then it's even more embarrassing that they could not stop them, I think.
He asked them to withdraw. They didn't try to stop them. This is what people don't know. They did not try to fight.
Yeah.
They withdrew from Aleppo.
Yeah,
During the high tension, during the high point of the conflict, in Syria, the Syrian army stayed in Aleppo. There was ISIS, there was Al Qaeda, there was so many, but the Syrian army stayed and controlled a big area in Aleppo. Why now did they withdraw from Aleppo? And then they went back to Hama. And then when they came to Hama, they withdrew from Hama. And there, people on Facebook, they were saying, "What's happening?" This is why today everyone, all his supporters, the military and others, they're calling him a traitor and a coward.
Yeah.
Because he had 5 divisions in Homs, 5 divisions, 75,000 troops. They couldn't stop those
troops.
HTS people coming in.
We need to wrap up.
Yeah, we need to.
Okay. So I mean, I think to wrap this up, it's even more embarrassing to go to Putin and tell him that you will lose. than
Yeah.
I don't think he went to Putin at all. I think Putin told him that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Putin ordered him that's it. The decision has been taken by Turkey, Russia, and Iran that he needs to go.
Yeah.
This is why he went back. He didn't open his mouth. Nobody's heard of him. He didn't say a word before he left. Because I think this is the order he got. That's what you're going to do, and that's it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting speculating here, and we've been talking very pragmatically. Maybe just to close on one final question for you. You can be as aspirational, as unrealistic as you would like. But if we were to ask you about your ultimate hopes, aspirations for the future of your country and for the Syrian people, what do you think is the ideal?
I always tell people, remember, in 2011, when the people rose up against the dictatorship and they were walking in the streets, peacefully, chanting 111, the Syrian people are one, they were not looking to Afghanistan. They were not looking to Iran, they were looking to the West. Obviously, do you see the crisis of refugees going from Syria to Afghanistan or to Iran or to any other of those countries? No, they all wanted to go west. It's true or not? They all risked their lives in the boats going west. That means this is the life that they want. They want to live like Westerners live, So this if we go back to what President Trump said, in his tweet 2 days ago, he said, "These people are not our friends. This is not our fight. Let them fight it out." But this is wrong. The regime is not your friend. It's true. The rebels are not your friend. Those extremists are not your friend. It's true. But the majority of peaceful people are your friend. They are Western friends. And we owe it to them to guide them towards the democracy that they seek to have.
That I agree on.
Thank you.
Then maybe on one last thing, on a more general note, we have this tradition, we always wrap it up. If you could just state into one of those cameras directly, your message as a person to the world.
My message to the world. Well, my message to the world, I want the world to be, what part of the world?
All the humans.
No, all humans, yeah. I think humans, we have a lot more, that unite us than what divide us. And we should work together, this world needs us to today, to work together, to challenge all the things that threaten our humanity. Might it be extremism, might it be climate change, might it be whatever. Regardless of the science to prove it or not to prove it, we have to stand together. Whatever challenges that may come, we have to look at ourselves as all humans, all citizens of this world, we are, as President Macron said, and I don't like very much President Macron, but he said there is no planet B, and until now, until President Trump comes and releases those documents about aliens, and if they exist, until then we have no planet B and no planet B. So we have to really work together to keep peace, in our world, and try to do our best to promote the values that we have and we cherish, and we were able to grow. And together in the West, try to do it. Also help other countries in the world, in the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Asia, wherever they need us. We have to be there. I'm not saying militarily, but we have to be there, with everything we can, with our soft power, with our love, with our guidance, and try to promote our values peacefully without imposing it on anyone else.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.